Hello, Juice County. Welcome to It's Happening Show Reloaded. Woo. I'm Jose Gloria, and I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Dylan Thompson.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. We are back. We have a fantabulous show for y'all tonight. We have the one and only Sandra and Casey McGuire Conway. It's happening.
Yeah. Very serious
full
people.
effect.
Yes.
I mean, we're going to have fun.
Yes.
We're going to talk some serious stuff and everything in between. But
Indeed.
We're just really excited and happy to have you all back here with us and to be back in here. Look at our new digs. You like it?
Woo. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
good. You know, new
like
location.
What you did with the place.
Upgrade.
Yeah, so big ups to Grand Central Arts Center, John Spiak, and all the beautiful folks that work here. I am an artist in residence here, so part of my art, and has been for a good amount of years, along with Dylan, has been putting on the It's Happening podcast. And through El Centro, Radio Santana, to all of our studios, the It's Happening Studios, Sanctuary Sound, we've been all over the place, but here we are now in our 212th show. So I'm looking really forward to the conversations that we'll be having in this here, our new place. So,
Oh, yeah.
But first and foremost, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm fantastic, and I'm glad to be doing this show. Maybe annually is the
Hey
new
now,
rate. No.
It's been a year and 3 months. Our
Yes,
last
it's
show was in December of 2023.
Been a hot
I
second.
don't feel good about that.
No, a lot's been going on, you know.
I know. So, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Of course, we survived COVID, so that is exciting.
Yeah, this is not an AI video of, we exist.
That's coming though. Yeah.
That's
This
next.
show will be on.
It'll be fully automated.
in perpetuity.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point to-
AI Jose Gloria and AI Dylan
Yeah, why?
Thompson will be not entertaining you for decades.
We
and decades
have
to
reached
come.
a threshold for AI training data. 212 is the hot point for podcasts. So
The top story for me is that Dylan exited from the long-haired Savage Club, as you can see.
exiled.
And entered into
Unceremoniously.
his the
Reverted.
the salt and pepper Bob Barker look. So I'm very excited for him.
rocking it.
So hooray for aging. We have age and
Yes.
for Just for Men. Proud sponsor of the show. No, it's not.
Future
But it's
sponsor.
definitely a future sponsor.
Please.
For all of us aging millennials in the audience. So let's
Beautiful.
go ahead and jump right into some quick stories, because we've been gone for a long time, a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
So much has happened. We couldn't possibly get through it, but
Just
we're
in
gonna
case
try.
you haven't looked at the news for a year, we're going to help you out.
Yeah,
Gonna
yeah.
catch you up here.
Yeah. So we are still at war, and a genocide is still happening in Gaza. Unfortunately, Israel ended the ceasefire that came through recently, and Trump is now waging war in Yemen, Ansar Allah, aka the Houthis. So, it's a really dire situation, unfortunately, with no end in sight. Ukraine and Russia are still at war, and recently President Zelensky got a mansplaining on behalf of Trump and Vance for the whole world to see, and was blamed for erroneously
Really, JD?
starting the war.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't start war. It was terrible. And we just really look foolish in front of the world. But hooray, Trump 2.0. Democrats' strategy to hide Biden until the election failed in spectacular fashion. So who would have thunk, hiding the fact that he was senile was going to backfire.
Oops.
It's the very first time that we had him in front of a live studio audience.
Yeah, it's an honest mistake to conceal that fact. to the
Even
American
Trump was
people.
like, I don't believe he knows what he's even talking about. He was really went at it. So, and then Kamala came in and busted an Amber Heard and shit the bed in spectacular fashion as well. That was a doozy. Or a dookie, if you will.
If you will, please.
All right. So Trump won by the smallest margin in history. It's not a mandate, but it is, it kind of is. He's like a bull in a china shop right now. Tesla stocks are plummeting as Elon Musk becomes the most hated gamer billionaire of all time.
Yeah, I play Path of Exile 2. And
as a
I'm
gamer,
insulted. No,
what does
I
the
don't
community
play.
have to
I'm
say
not gonna
about this?
I'm not gonna get canceled for that either tonight.
In local news, though, good news. So Jesse, Jonathan, and Ty won their re-election campaign.
There you go.
And good friend of the show, Ben Vasquez, won the hearts and minds of residents in his campaign for another year of being the people's mayor. Hashtag, a guy has no mayor. A guy has a people's mayor. So, but he's officially mayor pro tem. So, put some respect on his name. Call him MPT Vasquez. Derek Tran mounted a comeback to beat Michelle Steele. I think he won by less than 300 votes. It was we were proud supporters of that, except not so proud when he voted for that Lake and Riley bill. But we'll get to that. Trust and believe. Grant Pass was overturned, so the houseless situation has been addressed badly, by trying to displace people living on the streets with nowhere else to go while not building affordable housing or shelters. So, it's just so much.
Major development.
Major development. But, houselessness exacerbated as a problem in our society with no real end in sight except for just playing this whack-a-mole. It has been very well documented on this show for many years now. So Luigi Mangione, though, became a Bay symbol of the resistance movement. So that happened, and people were big mad. Yeah, that folks that living under a rock. Of course, Luigi Mangione allegedly shot CEO executive from a healthcare company, and so he is now in prison. Along with P. Diddy, who is not a symbol of resistance, quite the opposite.
Not the same kind of resistance. It's a different kind of crime. Guys.
Well, actually, we won't.
Well, I guess that's what all that gel was for. Okay. The baby oil.
I'm waiting for the logbooks for the Diddy parties. And for the trips to the island, the Jeffrey Epstein island. So I'm waiting for disclose. You released the JFK files. I need the damn files, of the flights. I'm sure Bill Clinton is in there several times. Actually, he is. I think that's allegedly what happened. And allegedly,
there's a lot of allegedly.
Yeah, there's a lot of allegedly. But no, that man. Why is he still around? Damn it. All right. Anyways, Haktua girl. We're almost finished here with our quick stories, man. But there was a lot.
It's a long quick.
There's a lot
for
a long quickie. Haktua girl, used Bitcoin to scam a bunch of people. So there you go.
That's kind of the dystopian future we're in. That's the new American dream is getting 50 minutes of fame and then rug pulling your fans for tens of thousands of dollars. That's cool.
If it's good enough for Trump and Elon, it's good enough for me.
Amen. Get it.
Yeah. My favorite thing from the Haktua was if she don't Haktua, don't talk to her. Hey.
See what you did there.
Hey, that's what the internet's saying. Hey, the internet stay winning.
It's never wrong.
Drake and Kendrick beef exploded. So this was the not like us movement. So I was very happy for Drake's downfall for sure.
Yeah. Taken out.
Yeah. Finally. Take that, Drizzy. Kanye West is a full-on Nazi. So that makes me sad.
It's unfortunate.
But makes the Nazis in office and power really happy, though. They got somebody to support them. Hey, Hitler did some good things, too. Never forget. Hashtag never
Is
forget.
Is he not fair?
He was a great artist, all right? And lastly, Bernie and AOC are going viral as Democrats are flailing as the party of opposition, with Chuck Schumer bending the knee and completely capitulating in the recent budgeting fight. The people are looking for leaders, and Bernie and AOC are trailblazing across the country with having rallies from 3,500 to 35,000 recently in Denver, Tucson. So they've been all over. Yours truly was able to be at the Las Vegas one, and it was just an honor to see my friend Bernie.
Your hero.
My hero. He signed my baseball, so I'm stoked. I can die a happy man now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy people are frustrated with leadership and they're not looking at at the mainstream Republican Party. Finally, AOC and Bernie have some appeal. That's good. I mean, people have a lot of energy right now. They're impassioned. And I'm glad we have our guests on today because that's something people can do. I mean, it's good people are excited, but, be careful, Because I'm just worried that, like, if we get too excited about that, are we going to be like funneling our votes to Gavin Newsom in a few years? You know, like, what's the end goal to this? Like, you know what I mean? But I think it's great that people are invigorated and like wanting to fight back.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of critique to be had, and we're going to talk to some folks from the part of the Bernie and AOC camp in the near future shows to kind of talk about like the legitimate critique of whether or not the Democratic Party can be reformed. Some would say definitely no. Some would say, hey, you know, if we're not here, then issues aren't like Medicare for all and universal basic health care, basic income aren't being talked about. And so, you know, Bernie in 30 years plus, you know, he's been able to finally shift the narrative. And so if nothing more, we can give him that, and then we can start to figure out what is more. But, you know, the idea that we can exist outside of the Democratic Party or the duopoly of the partisan politics and also like organize outside of it, they're not mutually exclusive. And so like, I think it's really important for us to do that mutual aid, do that organizing, and, you know, and then figure out ways that we can really impact and do transformational revolutionary change outside of it as we, you know, start to mount the fights within the Democratic Party. But yeah, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few, and there's many fronts in the fight for a better world. So with that, I want to go ahead and just jump into the next part of our show, which is we're going to talk about immigration and all the different things that have been happening under this new administration. Of course, you know, speaking of the failures of the two-party system, we would be remiss without mentioning that Obama was, of course, dubbed the deporter-in-chief for a reason, and it's because he tried, like Democrats tend to be trying so constantly, shifting to the right and saying like, no, we're tough on crime too, as Clinton did way back when, and the failed, you know, and Biden bill of, you know, with the 3 strikes bill and all these kinds of things. Recently, you know, of course, with the drone strikes that Obama started, and then of course the deportation. Nobody up until this moment, I think Trump might surpass it, but nobody has deported more people than the Obama administration. It remains true. You know, Biden, you know, got pretty close, and Trump in his first term also, you know, deported a lot of people. But, you know, this issue is not, you know, exclusive to just one party, although the rhetoric has been ramping up in recent time, right? So, you know, as Trump initiated his new term, he had a barrage of executive orders, you know, many throwbacks like wanting to reinstate the travel ban, you know, against folks from Muslim countries, but also many new ones, you know, so. You know, and we're going to talk with some of these with our guests here tonight, but we're talking about defunding attorneys for unaccompanied minors, leading military aircrafts to assist in deportations and fortifying the border, indefinitely suspending all refugees, sending folks to Guantanamo Bay, reestablishing stay in Mexico asylum policy, and a lot of these are executive orders or you know, similar to it. Rescinding the sensitive locations memo, labeling cartels as terrorist organizations, increasing deportations raids, and expediting removals that can be done from anywhere in the U.S. instead of just near the border, as had been the case. Rejecting and eliminating the asylum cases of you know, and just recently, this week, 500,000 folks from Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela were removed their temporary protective statuses. They recently sent some folks that were allegedly part of the a Venezuelan gang, to El Salvador, where, you know, they don't even know who they are, and these family members do not know, you know, if their family members were the ones that ended up over there. Of course, for as much as a lot of folks are raving about, you know, El Salvador's president, you know, ending a lot of the crime issues that were happening, the human rights violations have been just exacerbated. And our president is literally saying, like, we're going to send you guys to El Salvador, and I hear they don't treat their, you know, people very nicely. So literally boasting about, you know, violating human rights of folks that are, you know, that are American citizens or residents in this case. And of course, you know, he's been cracking down on tourist visas recently and legal residence with Mahmoud Khalil, you know, green card a person with a green card that was part of the Colombia protest. Because of that, you know, they're using the Aliens, what is it? The Aliens Act? Yes, to be able to deport folks or have them in concentration camps the way that they did to the Japanese during the Second World War, and so much more. But it goes without saying that our communities are under attack. Immigrants, refugees, folks from Muslim communities, Vietnamese folks, Latinos, of course, but LGBT folks, women. There's just a lot of the communities that are the most vulnerable are being, in fact, targeted and attacked right now. And protest and activism and a lot of the things that we took for granted as far as our First Amendment speech are being under attack right now. And so whether you're on the right or the left, this should really worry you considerably. But luckily, we have organizations locally that are doing their part to be able to fight back against the onslaught of these attacks and to be able to educate and empower our local immigrant communities to be able to mutually support each other as we're facing these threats. So with that, I want to bring on to the show Sandra de Anda and Casey McGuire Conway. So Sandra E. de Anda is an award-winning writer based in Santana, California. She holds a BA in English from Reed College in Portland, Oregon. Her work has been featured in LA Times, Voice of OC, Citric Acid, Sin Cesar, The Ear, and the late OC Weekly, where she co-founded the weekly column Deport This, which highlighted the stories of local immigrants and refugees in resistance. Sandra has also led introductory writing courses for young writers in Santana, emphasizing social justice and community engagement, supported by funding from California Creative Corps and Chispa. And she is the network coordinator at the Orange County Rapid Response Network, a volunteer-led organization that empowers immigrants facing detention and deportation in Orange County, California. Welcome to the show, Sandra. Woo! And we have Casey McGuire Conway. Casey is the non-binary child of Irish, Polish, Catholic, American East Coaster and a Vietnamese refugee, born and raised in Anaheim. Anaheim in the hills. They are a writer, artist, activist, organizer, and have done immigration work in the community for around 8 years, as well as LGBTQ organizing, fundraising for fundraising for Palestinian rights causes. Their raison d'être is rooted in decolonization, abolition, mutual aid, and socialism. Welcome to the show, Casey.
Woo! Damn.
Welcome.
Yeah. That was a roller coaster. You guys started real chipper, banter, and it got real grim.
It got dark.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it often does when you talk about the news. Yeah.
Truly. It can get really dark, as the room is a little dark now compared to past shows. But we try to keep it lively. So that's where we're going to kind of, expand on the spectrum of the human emotional experience. So I want to just
vibrational,
sensational.
It was like watching a pinball tournament or whatever it's called. My eyes like between the two of you. It's my first broadcast. It was a lot. I usually don't do pro bono tokenism work, but
yeah,
for the
God
bless
you.
All right, so we'll start with Sandra. Well, both of y'all, you're a member of OCRRN. That's what it is. And Sandra, you are the one paid staff network coordinator with OC Rapid Response Network. So can you tell us a little bit about OC Rapid Response? When was it founded, and what have y'all been doing up until the most recent time, before Trump got elected?
All right. I guess we're gonna get down to business.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just want to say, I don't know everything. I just be doing work. That's it. So, para que no me reclamen en el futuro. Entonces,
we're not offering legal advice here, so yeah, we're just.
See, don't come after me, fam. So the OC Rapid Response Network came to be under Trump 1. There's a lot of folks, a lot of Keystone folks that brought it together, a lot of attorneys, clergy, regular people, a lot of, queer folks. I got to name that. Right, that wanted to prepare the community for mass raids and mass enforcement. And so between 2016 to 2020, a lot of that was building up that crisis response muscle to be able to dispatch first responders, to be able to take legal notes, and to also videotape ICE, which is a right that many of us have. We can go videotape ICE. We can also ask ICE who they are trying to arrest and who they are and what their badge number is. But we do have the right to videotape them when they come into our communities. During those 4 years, I know a lot of the core organizers developed the legal intake with folks like from UCI Law and other legal partners to be able to capture any sort of violations in terms of the Fourth Amendment and just other amendment violations. So that's what happened between the first 4 years. A lot of those enforcement actions were targeted arrests. I think, if my memory serves me right, there was no sort of mass raid at any sort of factory or anything like that, but it was a lot of folks being met with ICE at their homes or in their vehicles. Between 2020 to 2024, because there was something called like Majorca's priorities, they were enforcing on people with aggravated felonies. So they had Majorca's had priorities for the most violent people. So it really played into the bad, good narrative in creating those priorities. So it was interesting, right? Because then we were coming to ICE check-ins, or we were just negotiating with ICE to push back on deportations, basically saying, hey guys, like, really, is this person really a priority for you all? This all happening in Civic Center. And so we were able to push back a lot of deportations, or as a community, we were able to sort of just, close those cases or just have them not be a priority for ICE. So it was a bit of a luxury, even though deportations were happening. But we were able to come to the table with a lot of community support to negotiate. Now we are under Trump 2. The negotiating power is pretty much gone because we're hearing about people getting picked up at their ICE check-ins basically getting streamlined to deportation or detention. And so we are definitely living in a different era of enforcement. We're also seeing more enforcement actions in the community, so more targeted arrests. But because the sensitive location memo that Trump put out, through some trusted contacts, we were told that ICE was at the Fullerton courthouse last Thursday or Friday. So now we know that sensitive locations are places that may be impacted. So the landscape is changing dramatically. But the whole time we have been building very tediously and closely with folks that have been in the local, the detention centers in the Inland Empire. But we have been documenting inhumane treatment in there. We have been empowering those that have been inside those detention centers through our hotline, right? Our hotline, it's been interesting to see our hotline during under Biden. We were getting maybe 5 to 10 calls a week, but it was for all sorts of things. A lot of people were calling for groceries or legal resources. Our hotline has now kind of just shot through the roof. We're getting calls, maybe 20, 30 calls a day. And our dispatchers, of course, they're the front line for receiving all of that information. People are they're calling from detention centers. They're calling from the community saying that they have not gone out to go get groceries, or they have not gone out to, do the things that they need to do. So like migration patterns locally are being interrupted, but also our economies are being interrupted. I know it's only been the first couple of months, but we're already seeing the way that, our whole community has been shaken to the core through these hotline calls. And I know you mentioned Derek Tran, and I actually gave him a piece of my mind respectfully and said, hey, man, I am here with you representing the hundreds of families that we organize with, and you signing the Lakin Riley Act did no service to any of your constituents, because whatever happens to one of your constituents is going to impact that whole neighborhood, that whole city. So I know that, like, I personally called him in amongst other partners and was like, man, you need to do better, because if you don't change your tune, then you will find yourself an opponent that will take you on. I'm not saying I'm on a run or anything. I'm just saying, like, you will find me at every event that you're going to be at, because if you're not going to change all of that. But of course, right now we need everyone. We need absolutely everyone on the front lines, even people who would not even consider themselves to be on the front lines. We're getting calls from Laguna Hills. We're getting calls from Lake Forest, places that have been untapped, that have enclaves of immigrant and refugee communities. They're calling us. They're saying, how can I protect this person that has provided services for me the last decades? So it's crazy. We've getting a lot of white women calling us, trying to, step up and stuff like that. But it's just been an incredibly crazy landscape. I was just telling everybody here that today I had like a 14-hour day just calling, making moves, making sure that everybody, like our ICE watchers, our participatory core group, like everybody is like, operating as they should as a coordinator, but they really don't need me. A lot of our community is just organically organized. And so they know how to show up for folks. It's just really centering all of that work, but also decentralizing it into committees that operate on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Cooked. She ate.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of great information, and it just gave us a lot of the context of how it started. Because I remember for a time there, folks who were organizing during Trump, the first presidency, because we thought there was going to be buses that were going to come to Immaculate Heart of Mary, I recall, and some other places. So folks were ready to take migrants at that moment. Of course, it's just we've seen in recent time how Texas has bused folks to New York and to other, like, just random places wherever they'd like to. And
I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Last year, some migrants were supposed to be bused over to Santa Ana because we're a sanctuary city, but there was negotiations that were made by different immigration rights partners that made it so they went over to LA, because LA had that infrastructure to take in, migrants, but also, right, if they were going to get dropped off in Santa Ana and folks in HB got wind of it, I mean, it was going to become a dangerous situation. So ourselves, our team has been on the ground for the last 8-9 years, and we hear all about these things. But gladly, I'm glad that they ended up going to LA, because right now here in OC, we just got a lot of MAGA right-wing extremists that who knows what they would do, So yeah, we definitely confronted that head on last year.
Yeah, and OC is a resource desert too. So a lot of those folks who have been stranded with hostile neighbors with no resources to turn to, it is better they went to LA, but it is a call out and indicative of where we live, that our leadership and our like more systemically styled organizing it's not ready for that situation, and it could definitely happen again, and it might not get redirected, especially because OC is an impacted county by asylum seekers and recent arrivals.
Yeah, and a lot of times, perhaps when it comes to immigration, Mexican migrants in particular have been scapegoated since he walked down that golden escalator and started saying that Mexico was sending their worst, and that has not ended. But now it's Venezuela and has been added to that list and as his targets, but also it's not, and of course Muslims throughout that time, but even before then, right, with just the stereotyping of us as terrorists or them as terrorists, but but it's also Asian communities, right? And you come from the Vietnamese community, and you've also seen how that community has been impacted, because there is a lot of folks that are either from India, from Vietnam, or from other parts of Asia, China even, that are undocumented and that are also being targeted, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to talk about like in academic and public spaces because folks are so shocked to hear that members of Asian communities are impacted, but it's that level of invisibility and erasure that really works against them. And I think it goes back to like this weird paradox of like the system will criminalize Southeast Asian, Vietnamese immigrants and communities, but society as a large is, there's the model minority myth. And like that can uplift the community, but also it also erases the realities of the community. So folks aren't looking. So this creates opportunity for the system to gain numbers. Nobody's putting up human walls to protect these groups. Nobody's making a huge public news fuss about these groups because, they're privileged. And they're like, mid-tier privileged. They're not bottom of the barrel, but they are impacted. And the system will rely on that invisibility to make numbers. And yeah, it's true. My mom, she's a boat person. She's a Vietnamese refugee. She was born in Saigon. That's part of my connection here to Little Saigon and why I'm so invested in the refugee community. And even in the numbers, in terms of ICE transfers, like Vietnamese folks and Southeast Asians, if grouped, overrepresent Latin American communities in transfers in terms of per capita and representation from their community. And that's really, odd, especially because the demonization narrative that has gone public is about Mexicans, is about Latin Americans, is about Middle Easterners. Then why is the biggest percentage of folks being transferred Vietnamese? And I think they are relying on that invisibility. And plus, Vietnamese folks, they're not North Asian. They don't fit into Japanese, Korean, or Chinese soft power. They are, typically low-income communities, depending on the decade that they arrived here. And they are criminalized, and they suffer because of it. And it's a really interesting situation because a lot of them came over as refugees and to California, Texas, and other states, and there was no resources, so a lot of them formed gangs and found alternative economies. And back then, it was like a felony for anything. You shoplifted, a felony. You looked at somebody the wrong way, it's a felony. And even though they came over as refugees, which is like a legal path, everyone's always talking about do it right, they became functionally undocumented because they were criminalized. And now they've been existing for a long time. And for a long time, deportation was not a priority in that community, especially the pre-1995 refugees. I think it was like 2008, an agreement between Vietnam and the United States was, there was like a normalization of relationships, and they said we won't deport pre-1995ers because of what they represent as refugees escaping the war. Will they be persecuted if they return to Vietnam and be called imperialists, be called Americans, be treated XYZ? Trump, I think it was 2020, amended that agreement and allowed for the deportation of pre-1995 Vietnamese refugees. And there was arrests happening, but it didn't escalate. From what we can see and the impacted community members that we work with, escalation happened within the last month. I personally these aren't public stats, but just from being part of the community, talking to folks, being in group chats with all these uncles, over 50 folks in California, it seems, have been detained. That might be nationwide, but the way they described it to me was 50 folks because they track who in the community disappears. And a lot of them have already arrived in third countries like Panama because Vietnam doesn't just take a deportation of anybody because they kind of stand on their own due to their anti-imperial history. They don't kowtow as much to the United States directives. They have an ability to say no, especially if they feel like a deportee, this is problematic, would be a burden on their system, like someone with mental illness or an intense criminal history. And they will do interviews on whoever is being flagged for deportation. But now, under Trump era, they're flagging third country deportations like Panama and creating stateless communities of Southeast Asians.
So is that kind of like the El Salvador situation where they can like send someone to a country that's not of their origin?
Kind of. It is a third-party deportation, but El Salvadorian super prisons are contracted detention centers. So they're technically, like if you follow the money, are still being detained by the U.S. extrajudicially without due process. It actually more resembles internment than it does creating statelessness, which both are awful. They're both failures of the liberal ideal. I don't consider myself a liberal, but the country does, and they're doing this.
Yeah, it's super scary. And kind of Jose brought it up earlier that I think a lot of people are interested in getting involved and seeing what they can do, especially because Trump seems to have expanded the powers. Maybe I think you alluded to like maybe they haven't done these mass raids, but they could. They have all the powers to do something crazy, right?
They have done mass raids in the past, and raids have happened. It's just our personal experience. Thank God we haven't had to
in
organize.
Orange County. We haven't had those.
That's
Yes.
not super.
That we've
Yes.
interacted
super
with.
common.
Exactly.
And that's important because part of the challenge has been to fight against the misinformation that that's it's prevalent right now. And on social media, anybody can go up and share a picture of ICE or whatever, and you don't really know if there is a raid or whatnot. But it promotes fear, and as you were mentioning earlier, Sandra, we're talking about of course the psychological, mental, emotional impact that is happening on immigrant communities, but we're not talking about enough the economic, which is really happening. And I've talked to countless folks that are telling me it's like, yeah, people are not going out as much, they're not shopping as much. And so what's immigrants not shopping at certain areas? Most of them are immigrant owned. That means that it has like a double effect, right? Like they can't buy their groceries or their things that they need, and these businesses that are like oriented towards serving the Latino communities are getting impacted, and as if it's not hard enough to have a business in the economy, right?
Yeah, I want to add something around the narrative stuff. So I know, for example, like on the 23rd of February, the LA Times had reported that we should be expecting like mass raids and things like that. But they were speaking about a specific type of raid that is called knock and talk. So when we saw that the LA Times reported on that, I know myself, Casey, and all my colleagues at the network were like, this is weird. We thought knock and talk as an ICE enforcement action has been striked out. So our organization for the last 8-9 years has been studying the way that ICE moves in the community. We've studied the way that certain enforcement actions have been challenged by OC residents or other Southern California residents, right? So we saw that and we're like, knock and talk is out of the picture. So we were very hesitant to share that narrative that the LA Times and other media groups were sharing. So what we did instead, we created a narrative saying, actually, knock and talk is being held up by a judge's order through something called formerly known KID versus Mayorkas. Now it's KID versus Nome, since that's the director of DHS.
Christy Nome.
No, Christy Nome. Thanks for the correction. And so we're like, well, that enforcement action has been striked out, so I don't think that's going to happen. So we put out graphics.
To clarify, the knock and talk is a surveillance and arrest tactic where an immigration enforcement officer will knock on your door and talk to you and attempt to lure you out to self-identify or
Yes.
find an opportunity to justify an entrance, or even look for probable cause. The whole thing is manipulative and dishonest, which is why it was
And a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Exactly.
So that's been striked out. So for us, we're like, all right, well, we don't think this is going to happen, but we're going to put out a notification saying, as of now, this litigation protects our Southern California residents or folks from the LAERO office. So we put that out there. But of course, we also did our due diligence. Me, Casey, and I don't even know how many other dispatchers, like 10 plus dispatchers, stayed up on Sunday night. We had people dispatching from 1 a.m. on Sunday the 23rd up until, the rest of that day, right? But it's like being able to understand the landscape, how it changes over time, but also organize alongside those that question that enforcement landscape is truly powerful. Like, there's another guy from Santa Ana who questioned why Interpol red notices were being used to target people. And he challenged that at the Ninth Circuit. That was a Santa Ana resident. And so it's just like, there's just a lot of really crazy, interesting stuff that you learn by simply having a hotline and by simply,
I don't know what happened.
I got no worries.
Everybody put your phones on silent.
But anyways, it's so interesting. It's really interesting to just like organize alongside those folks that are impacted because they know what's happening. So it's like, why not organize with them, support them and like be along their journey, because you are going to end up challenging the most systems when you're at the bottom. And so like, that's the way that we organize at the network. We are just kind of like, gun ho, like, y'all motherfuckers got an issue with the sheriff, y'all got an issue with ICE, like, let us know. We have a whole support team of organizers, of attorneys, of even elected officials that have decided to align themselves with our values and with our work. But we are very non-traditional. We're very non-traditional organizers. We don't give into the sort of nonprofit system. We question the nonprofit system. We also don't have hierarchies. It's just... And that's just the way that it has to work in order to show up for folks. Because when you think you have more power than another person, you're thinking of organizing them instead of organizing with them. So that's like what we have been doing like the last 8-9 years, just tracking enforcement and
For
supporting
sure.
those that questions the power that be.
That's great. Yeah, from the bottom up, right? So I love everything that you said. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Sandra and Casey on It's Happening.
Woo!
And we're back on It's Happening here with Sandra and Casey McGuire Conway.
Woo! Yes.
Yes, the notorious CMC.
You're just airing out my middle name.
Yeah, that's it.
Edit that out. I don't need to
You're
be
kind of
followed.
getting doxxed right now,
Literally.
partially. Yikes.
Hey, it's on your Instagram. I'm sorry. If you don't want
Yeah,
your-
it's on
Well,
your-
now they can find my Instagram.
Another take, guys.
Nah, just kidding.
I already said it in the beginning. Too bad. Yeah,
You've
you're
already been
exposed.
doxxed.
Yeah, we'll be sharing your address at the end. Anyways,
Well, I rent a room,
Blood
so good
type.
luck getting through my landlady.
Yeah, but kind of going back to some things I was talking about, like about the excitement of people about to get involved in fighting what Trump's doing. Like, we're seeing the broadening of his powers. Shouldn't there be more things that people can participate in with the network, or like for instance, like there are these like extrajudicial deportations, right? Like, can you explain some of the actions people could take as volunteers or as informed community members that could combat that?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, if you're not on the streets, you're not doing enough. And so this could be anything. Right now, right, we have community patrols when different organizations or different groups need a community patrol. Then, we tap into our ICE watchers. We say, hey, does anyone have capacity to patrol this Saturday at this community event, right? As I had mentioned, non-traditional and traditional modes of making money are being interrupted now because of the fear in the community. And so that is like one way that folks can get involved. A lot of folks have been calling our hotline just to make sure that in their community they're safe. So if they see a suspicious vehicle, they'll call us, and then one of our ICE watchers will go and meet up with that person, and then they'll verify the vehicle, who's in the vehicle, and things like that. But it really is, it is a balancing act as a rapid response network. I think a lot of people are looking at us as a place that quells fear and, gives real time verification and narratives. And so I think even right now, as I mentioned, right, a lot of the deportations and detentions are not even happening in broad daylight. They're happening administratively. They're happening behind closed doors. So people need to consider, can I go to my neighbor's ICE check-in, or can I assist them in getting them an attorney? Things like that. It's really about questioning our complacency and our comfort to sacrifice for others. And I mean, the work that we do is we do sacrifice our time to give people time out in the world. So, we do, we've done immigration cases, but we also have done criminal defense cases as well. The work that we do aims to save time for people in cages so that they, it's so messed up how you have one shot at proving, at least on the criminal justice system, at getting a bond review. You have one shot. If you don't get that shot, you will remain in local custody unless, anything extra comes along. But most of the time, you will just remain in custody unless you take a plea deal, you go to trial. In the immigration system, what we have seen, right, is something called a Rodriguez bond for folks that are eligible. They may be able to get a bond after 6 months of detention. That's already a lot of time. And the fact that that is like one of the few avenues you have a shot at getting out on is crazy. We're seeing, mass detainment right now. So it's just like all of these families are gonna have to organize and understand how the immigration system works, right? But also those families need to understand that they're the agents of change. Why? Because there's a lot of attorneys right now taking advantage of community members. There's attorneys that are saying, I also practice criminal defense law when they only do immigration law. We have met so many of these immigration attorneys that are scammers. So it's like, you are going to be the best defense on your loved one's case. And folks on the inside, you will be the best defense for your case on the inside. Because a lot of times, sometimes attorneys don't want to push the envelope. Like for us, like recently, like my brother was arrested. I made sure to pack his court with 30, 40 community members. I needed that judge to see that my brother is someone that is valuable. But I only learned that trick because I organize with those in detention. I only, everything that I know in terms of getting people out of cages. I know people call us because they're like, you guys are the people that get people out of cages. And it's like, that's not just me and Casey. This is like hundreds of families that have created this collective knowledge of how to prepare for bond, how to, do a habeas corpus, how to, question or even do impact litigation. And it's just like, it's just been a journey. And, I invite people. We hopefully will be doing a training this Sunday on something called participatory defense. But participatory defense is a model that was created by Black mothers challenging mass incarceration of their Black sons. At the end of it, mass detention is really just an extension of the mass criminalization of people of color. So these Black mothers have given us a model that has worked time and time again. We have seen some amazing outcomes. We've seen people face life that are now free. Why? Maybe they had a mental health crisis, or maybe it was a self-defense case. We've seen many of those. But right, like you take the same framework of challenging and intercepting each move on the criminal defense side or on the immigration side, and you challenge all of these moments in which you can intercept. And many times you'll find that there is an injustice being done somewhere in there because the system is so fucked up. And so it's that, or laws are changing as well, right? There's resentencing laws. Right now, a big thing many of the attorneys we work with are saying to consider things like post-conviction relief, consider getting vacatures for your past charges. Why? Because a lot of folks maybe fucked up when they were 17, now they're 40. Why are they going to be judged for a mistake that they made 20, 30 years ago, or even a mistake that you made a week ago. We are people that change all the time. And so I think for us and the way that we organize is we are not the worst thing that we have done. And unfortunately, Trump is saying the worst thing that people have done is migrated. And so it's like, nah, dude, all our people gotta be free. All of us are gotta organize, but it really is about showing up in a way that maybe you never even considered showing up, giving 5-10 hours of your time a week to maybe supporting a family, dropping off groceries because they're scared to go pick up groceries, or going to go pick up their kids with them because they're scared. Unfortunately, now schools are sensitive locations, right? But it's really reimagining community defense and community protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sandra mentioned participatory defense, and at the end of the day, like, just to be frank, like, we are abolitionists. You know, abolish ICE, abolish the carceral system, abolish detention, abolish deportation, and so many more other things. And deportation, detention, you know, these settler colonial tactics are not new. They're centuries old. They are even sustained during democratic, you know, administrations. It changes. The priority changes. You know, under a democratic administration, the priority is respectability and sustenance for the empire. How do we keep things running for the long run? And how do we not look like villains doing it? We target criminals. We target people with criminal records. We create a system that criminalizes folks, creates a distinct class, and then we kill empathy for those folks. Under a Republican administration, the primary strategy is fear-mongering. How do we demonize a group to turn the majority against itself so they're not looking at a toxic ruling class doing whatever it is they want to do in the background?
Oligarchy.
Exactly, oligarchy, American hegemony. And all of that is to say, the question of what can people do has always been a question. If you're idle, you probably have always been idle, and you have to question what that means. And then several times, too, we've talked about the economic viability of current deportation strategies. We are getting folks calling saying they're too afraid to go grocery shopping. So then we try to mutual aid that, find volunteers who are willing to do that on their behalf. People are too afraid to go outside. And it sucks to say that we live in a world where economic viability is a deciding factor for folks politically. Is this affecting the economy rather than are people being impacted in negative ways? Is harm being done to them? Are they being mistreated? Is their history and background being disregarded? Are they being demonized? None of these matters. For a lot of people, they're just like, what is the economic effect? And that is built into the system, right? Like, migration is a feature of settler colonialism. It creates an impacted labor class to support the spread of suburban sprawl. You know, the economy is completely dependent on these things, but it's also dependent on the subjugation of these things, and it's dependent on the illegalization of people in order to create competitive rates of labor for the oligarchy to abuse. All of it's obscene, and that does once again beg the question: what do people do if the system itself is invested in these things? You know, so I say you really do have to invent alternative forms of power. And that's kind of what our OCRN has done, where people have come together and being able to identify points of leverage, points of impact, radical ideas of resistance, and sort of make it happen in complete, purposeful ignoring of current systems. What can we invent and experiment with now to protect our impacted people? Because if we only rely on leveraging nonprofits and electoral systems, those who exist outside their respectability that is generated by settler colonialism will always be left behind. And as abolitionists, nobody is left behind. So for us, we are recruiting from the community first responders, people who are, you know, just literally anyone who's interested in saying, hey, you know, there was an ICE sighting here, I'm going to go, whoever else is going to go, and we're going to go confirm it or not and show support for the community members being impacted. This in itself is completely extra, like, systemic, you know, and that's something people can do. And it's not just OCRN. Anyone can form a rapid response team, and even like this all is inspired from Black radical tactics like police watching. ICE verification comes from police watching, which in itself, police are, like I said, a colonial enforcement tool. All of this is all connected. So if folks are wondering what they can do, they need to organize. And yes, we have to leverage electoralism sometimes, nonprofitism sometimes. But if we're not forming things outside those systems, the moment that the respectability politics no longer considers nonprofits and electoralism appropriate, it will be swept away. So mutual aid, individual organizing, ICE Watch, direct action, pressure the system, overload the system, get involved.
Yes. Yeah, well said. Well said.
Okay. Yeah, we're running short on time, but and there's really so much to talk about. But I think the greatest takeaway that I'm getting right now is that, folks have the ability to get organized. There's a role for everybody and anyone that wants to be an ally and be in solidarity with immigrants' rights community. I've seen that you all, when you go to the events, are giving these cards out, which is, I do not wish to speak with you, and, has the rights, and been giving these out to undocumented communities. It's these guys
Know
that are
your rights.
English and Spanish, know your rights. So, even just as important as knowing like the difference between a judicial order and an administrative one, that can save somebody's life. Telling your kids to not open the door, for agents, that can save people from being deported. Even, apartment complexes being organized and not letting ICE in. I've seen in many places where people are with megaphones, like blasting out, "Hey, ICE is in our community." Again, Orange County, we're lucky in that we live in a sanctuary state. We live in Santana, that's a city that's a sanctuary city, but that does not mean that our communities are not getting deported. It's just like, they're targeted kind of attacks. But I wanted to mention, just if you could briefly, with the role that like UCI Law or ACLU, some of the member organizations have in public law centers, particular. So these organizations are helping some folks fight their deportations. Because I also know that there in Santana specifically, there's a legal deportation fund, right, to be able for folks to apply to fight, because it costs money, right, to hire lawyers to be able to fight your deportations. But at least here in Santana, there's some funds for that, and there's law groups or individuals that can or have done pro bono work, right?
Yes. So a lot of the folks that you mentioned, they're part of the OC Removal Defense Warriors group. They meet quarterly. I think now they're probably meeting a little bit more. But we give each other updates or, ask each other questions about. I recently asked them about a judge at Mesa Verde. But right, like it's all of these folks, and they're not all attorneys. Some people are legal advocates, like myself and Casey, right? But yeah, like Public Law Center, the OC Public Defender's Office, UCI Law, they have been amazing partners because they embrace a participatory defense model of lawyering. They say, I will listen to my client, and I will listen to the community, because this case does not simply just belong to me. This case belongs to the community. The community is also putting their input. A lot of the times, right, we collect letters of support in order to show equities to a judge that this person is more than their charge codes. And that goes the same in immigration court as it is in the criminal justice court. So they have been able, and we are so thankful that they have embraced this framework to do movement lawyering with us. There's many attorneys that say, no, this is my case. I'm the only person that gets to see the discovery, or I'm the only person that gets to see these parts of the case. And for us, in order to be able to do narrative work, we also need those attorneys to accept the narrative that we have created around that community member. We know that community member because we live with them or we have visited them, right? So they have been pivotal partners, in helping us address a lot of gaps. I mean, I don't want to toot our horn, but, we realized that there was a gap in the county in the public defender's office with the specific attorneys named Padillas. They do vacatures. They vacate people's charges, especially the most difficult cases in which it's kind of hard to find an avenue of relief. Like, they will help vacate those charges, and then we can make an argument to a judge like, hey, man, like, the charges that made them deportable are no longer there. Why is this case still open? You know, we can begin to make those arguments. But at the county, we had one fully funded Padilla attorney. We had one whose contract was about to be up. And so our team of volunteers and impacted families pushed the county to have 3 permanent ones. Our goal is to have 7, but you know, it's things like being at the bottom on the ground that you begin to see, you know, all of these little discrepancies in all of these loopholes. But you need to be on the ground. If not, you're never going to see them.
Awesome. Right on. Well, thank you once again, Casey, Sandra. Woo! First name
thanks
only.
for joining us.
Yeah. Y'all have been incredible, and our first guest back after a very long hiatus.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you think the show went?
I think we'll have another great show when we have you back in a year. No kidding. We'll do more shows.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see you in 2026.
We're behind bars.
With that, I want to thank Edgar Silva for being an awesome audio video engineer. Iron Lion Media here at the It's Happening Studio 2.0. Yeah. I want to thank Ruben Headband,
aka
Reyes.
Headband.
Yeah. Our good friend from volleyball and from kickball and you know, just all sorts of magic that we've done over the years, helping us.
Pickleball.
Yep. No, not you.
No. Okay.
No.
Well, working into that.
Karaoke.
It's Happening pickleball team.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, invite Boomer.
We'll make it to regionals. Damn it.
Yeah. No,
We're facing off against OCRN though, I think in the semifinals. So yeah, watch out.
Yes, and of course,
Well, public defenders then.
Yeah.
and I want to thank Yenny Diaz for being one of our
Yenny.
producers.
Indefinite interim executive producer.
Can we thank our podcast vixens, Aaron and Liz?
Yes,
They're so
Aaron for bringing the pizza,
For
and
dabbing.
They've been
And-
dabbing my sweat, you guys.
and Liz for being the being Liz and the powder girl. All right, y'all. So from Dylan Thompson and Jose Gloria and all of us here on It's Happening, we are signing off.
It's happening! Woo! Pretend there's music. That's when you pretend there's music.
Ando por las calles en el centro de la ciudad. Cara me quiere ver, nadie me quiere ayudar. Hambre, tengo frío y no sé qué hacer. Gobierno maldito me la va a deber.